Humanity had always been seen as the reasonable diplomat within the intergalactic alliance, a species willing to negotiate, adapt, and find harmony in a universe filled with countless differences. Though humanity had overcome many struggles to reach this point, their peaceful approach left them underestimated. They had always worked towards diplomacy rather than conflict, choosing restraint when possible and patience when required. This stance earned them allies, but it also bred contempt among some powerful factions, notably the Coalition of Superiority. The Coalition, a collection of species that prided themselves on strength, technological advancement, and sheer dominance, considered humanity weak. Their superiority complex blinded them to the qualities that made humanity formidable. To the Coalition, humans were soft, naive diplomats who could be toyed with, provoked, and disregarded without consequence. Whenever humans proposed peaceful solutions or compromises, the Coalition members laughed behind closed doors, scoffing at what they deemed weakness. For years, the Coalition toyed with humanity, testing their patience in subtle and overt ways. They imposed harsh sanctions on human trade routes, slowed their progress by withholding resources, and interfered with their colony expansions. Humans continued to try for diplomacy, seeking compromise after compromise, often accepting unfair deals just to keep the peace. The Coalition took advantage of this restraint, assuming it meant humanity lacked the capacity to retaliate. Among other alliance members, whispers grew. "Don't push the humans too far." Allies who respected humanity's diplomatic strength cautioned the Coalition against their provocations, warning that patience had its limits, even for humans. Yet the Coalition laughed off these warnings, their arrogance too deep-seated to recognize the quiet strength within humanity. Each act of disrespect, each limitation imposed, only seemed to strengthen the Coalition's belief in their dominance. They became more brazen, blocking essential supplies, forcing human settlements to abandon newly claimed territories, and interfering with agreements humanity made with other alliance members. To them, humanity's restraint was proof of weakness, and they continued to push, thinking there would never be a response. But within humanity, anger simmered, cloaked by their calm diplomacy. This wasn't the fury of a reckless species, but a controlled rage that built quietly, like the slow burn of embers awaiting a spark. Humans were loyal to their allies and committed to peace, but they were also not oblivious to the Coalition's disrespect. Leaders of humanity kept records, tallying each slight and each grievance. They knew their strength, their advanced weaponry and strategic capabilities, yet they chose peace as a first option, time and time again. One day, however, the Coalition took things a step further, crossing a line no one thought they would dare. A human colony on the outskirts of Coalition-controlled space became the target of their arrogance. Under the guise of a routine inspection, a Coalition fleet entered the colony's sector and, without warning, unleashed destruction upon it. It was an act of total annihilation, leaving behind nothing but ruins and thousands of lives lost in an instant. The Coalition made no apology. In fact, they treated it as a demonstration of power, a show meant to remind humanity of its place. When the news reached the rest of humanity, the galaxy felt a shift. For the first time, grief and fury were openly voiced by human leaders. The images and cries of the fallen colony echoed throughout human-controlled space, amplifying the collective sorrow and disbelief. Across the Alliance, humanity's allies joined in mourning, while others braced themselves, wondering what would come next. To the Coalition, this was simply another assertion of power, a message that their superiority was absolute, and that humanity would bow, as always. But they underestimated the resolve that had held humanity together for centuries. This time, humans sent a single message to the Coalition, a demand for accountability, a request for a public apology, and an assurance that no further acts of violence would follow. The message was clear and firm, a final diplomatic attempt to avoid full-scale conflict. The Coalition, in their arrogance, replied with nothing but laughter and mockery, dismissing humanity's words with insults and disdain. They treated it as a joke, another example of human weakness. What the Coalition didn't realize was that their actions had triggered something irreversible. The patience that humanity had so carefully maintained had finally worn out. The obliteration of the human colony rippled across the galaxy like a tremor before an earthquake. The tragedy was beyond comprehension: a peaceful settlement, thriving and innocent, reduced to ashes by a coalition fleet in a single, brutal act. Across human space, people mourned, but underlying that grief was something more potent: rage. A collective fury, buried under years of restraint, emerged. This was not a species accustomed to turning its anger into war, but this was no ordinary offense. The coalition had gone too far, leaving humanity with a gaping wound that demanded justice. In a rare display of unity and sorrow, every human colony and outpost participated in memorials for the lost. Families, friends, and entire communities mourned together, grieving the thousands of lives that had been erased in a moment. For many humans, this attack was more than a loss. It was a violation of everything they valued. Diplomats, leaders, and citizens alike felt the same fire burning within, a shared realization that something had to be done. Human leaders held a summit, gathering their best minds, generals, and strategists. They weighed their options carefully, knowing that any response would alter the balance of the alliance. They were still, even now, considering peace as an option, hoping the coalition might offer an apology, a recognition of their own atrocity. And so, a final message was sent, brief and direct. It demanded that the coalition acknowledge their actions and apologize to humanity, with a solemn promise that if such an event happened again, the coalition would face consequences they couldn't imagine. But this time, there was no laughter behind closed doors and coalition chambers. They dismissed humanity's demand with open mockery. The coalition's leaders broadcast a public message across the galaxy, belittling humanity for thinking they could negotiate after suffering such a devastating loss. They used the moment to reinforce their own position, declaring the act a necessary measure against an unworthy and weak species. Coalition citizens cheered, unaware that their leaders had crossed a line no words could undo. For humanity, the coalition's response was an answer, a declaration of hostility that left no room for peace. The message had been received, and now, humanity would respond. In private, human leaders ordered the mobilization of fleets, ships that had long been hidden from the Alliance's view. For centuries, humans had practiced restraint, never showcasing their full capabilities. Their warships, loaded with the latest stealth technology, had remained concealed, unknown to most. But now, humanity's true strength would emerge. It began with a quiet readiness. Across human colonies, soldiers prepared, engineers worked tirelessly, and scientists ensured that every defense and weapon was in top form. Allies of humanity, those who had warned the coalition to tread carefully, watched with a mix of fear and respect, sensing that something monumental was about to unfold. Though they had never doubted humanity's loyalty, they had never seen this side of their friends, a force willing to unleash its full might. In silence, human fleets assembled, and in a matter of days they moved into coalition space with precision and purpose. They launched a surprise offensive, striking critical military outposts and disabling the coalition's communication hubs. The coalition, caught off guard and blinded, struggled to understand what was happening. By the time they realized it was humanity, it was too late. Human forces were already dismantling their defenses, targeting every ship and installation that had enabled their arrogant dominance. One by one, the coalition's fleets fell. Human technology, developed over decades with meticulous care and quiet innovation, outmatched the coalition's defenses. With cyber warfare, stealth tactics, and weapons no one had known humans possessed, they overwhelmed the coalition's forces at every turn. Coalition commanders, so accustomed to their supposed superiority, found themselves powerless. Their attempts at counterattacks were rendered useless as human fleets moved with strategic brilliance, outmaneuvering them with an ease that was terrifying to witness. Messages of surrender began to flow in, but humanity had not come to negotiate. The coalition's leaders, once proud and dismissive, were now desperate, pleading for mercy they had never considered showing. They sent envoys to beg for a ceasefire, offering reparations, apologies, and concessions in a futile attempt to stop the onslaught. But humanity, for the first time in its history, chose to make a statement. They dismantled the coalition's power, erasing their military capabilities and reducing their influence within the Alliance. The reckoning was swift and precise. Humanity made it clear that this response was not a conquest, nor a thirst for power. It was justice for a crime that could not be forgiven. As the last remnants of the Coalition's once imposing fleets crumbled, the message to the galaxy was unmistakable. Humanity had finally snapped, and their patience had limits. Every species watched in stunned silence as the Coalition's defenses, once thought impenetrable, lay shattered, their arrogance reduced to rubble by a force they had so gravely underestimated. Humanity's response had not only broken the Coalition's military power but had also shattered their perceived superiority. In the aftermath, human leaders broadcast a solemn statement across Alliance channels. It was not a declaration of triumph, but a reminder to all who had observed: humanity valued peace, but their commitment to it was never a sign of weakness. They had endured endless provocations, extending olive branch after olive branch, but they would not allow the slaughter of their people to go unpunished. The message was simple and resolute: harm us, and we will protect ourselves with every ounce of strength we possess. Throughout the Alliance, the story spread rapidly, turning into a near legend overnight. Every colony, every outpost, every corner of space inhabited by Alliance members heard of humanity's rise and their refusal to be belittled any longer. For humanity's allies, who had once cautioned the Coalition to stop their provocations, the reckoning was a victory that confirmed their trust. They had stood by humans for their loyalty, resilience, and honor, and now they felt a sense of vindication in seeing humanity rise with unyielding strength. The Coalition's own citizens, meanwhile, were left in a state of shock and disbelief. They had believed in their leaders' assurances of superiority, and were now grappling with the reality that they had been defeated by a species they had long mocked and underestimated. The Coalition itself was in shambles. Their government, once a bastion of arrogance and domination, was fractured, its leaders deposed or captured by human forces. There would be no return to power for them, no restoration of the oppressive regime they had so confidently wielded. Negotiations followed, but this time they were different. Humanity, rather than seeking domination or vengeance, demanded only that the Coalition formally acknowledge their crimes and dismantle any policies of superiority within their society. They insisted on reparations for the families of those lost in the colony attack and ensured the Coalition would never hold the power to repeat their actions. It was a clear and uncompromising stance, one that left the Coalition humbled, stripped of both pride and power. In the Alliance Council, a transformation began to take shape. Humanity's allies proposed changes to prevent similar conflicts in the future, advocating for respect among all species and instituting policies of cooperation rather than superiority. The Alliance, once fractured by arrogance and divisions, found new unity, with humanity at its center as both a respected equal and a reminder of what could happen when peace was taken for granted. Across human space, life returned to normal, but with a newfound sense of security and strength. They had defended their honor and their people, showing the galaxy a side of themselves few had ever seen. Humanity's resilience, long mistaken for weakness, was now recognized for what it was: the strength to endure, to protect, and when needed, to stand unbreakably against those who sought to do them harm. The loss of the colony would never be forgotten, nor the lives taken in that brutal act, but humanity had made sure those lives were honored with action, showing that even in the darkest moments, they would rise. Years later, the phrase, "No species will forget the day humans finally snapped," became a common saying in Alliance space. It was a warning and a reminder, a story passed down as a lesson in humility and respect. The galaxy had witnessed what humans were capable of when pushed too far, and from that day forward, no species dared to underestimate them again.